it's going to be where people's minds are being controlled. You see, that's what a cult is. But
Yeah.
their minds are being controlled. And it's not just by listening to the media and all of that, which that has controlled people's minds for centuries. But it's something in the phones and in the wavelengths and the vibrations that are controlling people's minds. And I think what we're going to discover is how that technology has been used to control our minds.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's David Palmer, the Leo King, and I'm so excited to have world-renowned astrologer Joni Patry in the house. If you don't know Joni, she's so amazing. I love her so much. I met her back in 2018 at UAC, and she's been doing this for over 4 decades. You wouldn't believe it, but she has. After starting out in Western astrology, Joni started to get and made a big transition to be into Vedic astrology. What was it, Joni, like 25 plus years ago that you did this big transition?
Yeah, it was. It was in the early 90s that I transitioned because I just wanted something to give me more precise predictions. And Vedic did it. So I kind of dabbled in it in and out because at first they tried to tell me, you can't use the outer planets. And I'm like, well, if I can't use the outer planets, I'm not going. This isn't going to work for me, right? So finally, I found 2 teachers that use the outer planets. And I said, okay, let's go forward. And that's where I really dove in, hook, line, and sinker. And I learned Vedic astrology. As a matter of fact, all the stuff way back then, the books were so bad. There were all these Indian books and they were written terrible. And we didn't have the internet like we do today. It wasn't like you could go on and learn things like you can today.
Right.
So it had to be through, meeting with people in person. And even back then, long distance phone calls were really expensive. You don't remember all this. So you had to go in person to learn at conferences or meetings, and the books were awful. So I dedicated myself to learn this. And I wrote my own book because it was so difficult to understand from all the other teachings. So I wrote my own book in 2003, and it's called Eastern Astrology for Western Minds, because put it in the context of, if you're a Western astrologer, this is how you're going to see it. So it made it really easy for the Western mind to comprehend and learn Vedic astrology. So I wanted to make this available to everyone and make it, easy to understand, which if you have a good teacher, it's not as hard as you think. But Vedic astrology did give me what I was looking for, and that's precision with prediction.
I love that. And you've been, of course, teaching as well. You have the University of Vedic Astrology. You also have a new Galactic Planner, and you just have a new book that just came out predicting from, what was it, 2024 through 2042?
I'll give you, because sometimes I forget. It's 2024 to 2042, World Predictions, What is Our Future? And one person said, did you just pick those numbers because that was kind of cool, that it was a reversal of 4 and 2? And I said, well, yeah, kind of, but no, it takes 18 and a half years for Rahu and Ketu to go through all 12 signs of the zodiac. So I wanted to pull it through all 12 signs, and that's what the time difference equated to, because every time Rahu and Ketu are in a different sign, we have these major events, because you know that when you have Rahu and Ketu in a sign, that's going to be where the eclipses fall.
Yes.
You have eclipses twice a year, a solar eclipse twice a year, a lunar eclipse before and after. But those signs that Rahu and Ketu are in are very significant in terms of world events, I found. But then I added 2 other features that really helped me make my predictions so accurate. And that was when I combined other planets with the eclipses, such as, well, first of all, Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn are the social planets. They deal with the economy, what's going on socially, politically in the world. And whenever they're with Rahu or Ketu or combined with an eclipse, this is a major event and turning point. Now, on top of that, when you add in the three outer planets, that's when you have major events that are life-changing or world-changing. So in other words, I started looking at where Rahu and Ketu were with Jupiter, Saturn, and the three outer planets. Whenever they came together, it represented major changes. But then the triggering planet I found that came in because, you can get Rahu and Ketu for 18 months, right? In a summer
Right.
conjunct things. How do you know when something's going to happen within that 18 months? I found that Mars is the trigger. You get Mars that comes along and either conjuncts or opposes those positions with Rahu and Ketu, and that's when the events happen. It's just
Yeah.
clockwork. This was my whole predictive tool that I uncovered and I put in this book because I know you know my story because I went back to, it was 2017. I know this is kind of obnoxious showing my books, but
No, it's great.
I wrote this book in 2017, Rahu and Ketu. That was where I started to unravel this whole mystery, right?
Mm.
And so what I discovered was whenever Rahu was in Sagittarius and Ketu was in, Rahu was in Gemini and Ketu was in Sagittarius, that something catastrophic always happened. And so my first gleaning on all of that was when we had September 11th. So 2001, we had Rahu in Gemini and Ketu in Sag, and we had that catastrophic event.
Right.
And I want you to know Rahu was with Jupiter, and you think, Jupiter's so great. Well, Jupiter can magnify and make things even bigger.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the day of September 11th, Mars came, opposed that, triggered the whole event. So I knew that happened. So I said, well, let me go back 18 and a half years prior to see what happened before. And I arrived at the year of 1982. And at first, nothing came to mind till it went, that was the AIDS virus.
Yeah.
And everyone was terrified because no one knew how you got it, but people were dying. It was an awful time. So that was 1982. I said, well, let me try this again. I went back 18 and a half years prior to that. 1963, Kennedy's assassination. Right. So then I tried it one more time. I mean, I could go back and back and back. But 1945 was the bombing of Hiroshima.
Right.
So here it was 2017, and I knew in 2020, Rahu was going to go into Gemini and Ketu and Sag. And I thought there is going to be a catastrophic event that changes the world forever. I wrote that in this book. Okay. So
now I want to ask you a question. Is it true in Vedic astrology that those nodal positions are exalted, meaning like the North Node when it's in Gemini is exalted? Because I've heard that, or is it Taurus? Because I've heard that it's sometimes both.
Yes, there's most people would say, at least in Parashara's teachings, that they're exalted Rahu in Taurus and Ketu in Scorpio. Okay.
Got you.
Yes. Is that right? Or is that the other way around? Yeah.
I think that's what I've heard.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But a lot of people agree that when they're in air signs, Rahu being an air sign, because the whole myth between Rahu and Ketu is that this serpent it just slithered in between the sun and the moon. And what happened was the other planets saw this and they tattled on the serpent because they were all in line to get Amrita, the elixir of, to give you eternal life. So all the planets were lined up to get this elixir. And the snake slithers in between the sun and the moon. And finally, when they realize it, Lord Shiva sends a disc and slices it in half. And then we have Rahu and Ketu, but it drank the elixir, therefore it's immortal. But my whole point with this story is when the sun and the moon come together in Rahu and Ketu, we have eclipses.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's also the gift that Vedic astrology brought the whole astrology community is Rahu Ketu, is of course in Western we call them the nodes of the moon, the north and the south node.
yes,
But a lot of people have to remember that it's Vedic astrology that gave the gift
right,
to all the other astrology out
right,
there.
exactly.
And so I find it really interesting being a Western astrologer who, I'm not going to say I'm a professional Vedic astrologer, but I'm going to say I know what I'm doing, and I study enough to be dangerous, I guess you could say. But what I found really interesting is how in Western it's always looked at as the North Node, Rahu, as just the good parts. Like nobody ever talks in Western about the harsh energy that Rahu brings, the very kind of more, dare I say, egoic or insatiable energy. Because if you know the story, it's just the head, right? So there is no body. And so it's, especially if you have Jupiter there, of course it's going to go as far as it can go. It's not going to have a limit, you know?
Exactly.
Right? So,
Yeah, so going back to what signs are exalted in, they say because Rahu's the head, that it does better in air signs because the air signs are the thinking mind.
mm,
And Rahu is all about the thinking mind. It can be obsessive, compulsive, and out there, addictive actually. Whereas K2 is the complete opposite. K2, I always say Rahu takes us into the world with our desires, but K2 takes us out of the world with death and being on the other side. They're completely
mm.
different. And I always say one's the future and one's the past, but that's actually a Western concept, not necessarily a Vedic concept, but it does. K2 will bring in things from the past. I know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because it definitely happens, but
Well, also, it's kind of interesting because in the Mahadashas, like a Rahu period is what, 18 years that
isn't
you're
that
in it?
interesting where
And
they,
then K2 is 7 years.
yes, yeah,
So it's an interesting one because going back to your book and even where you're using all this work that you've done with Rahu Ketu, it's interesting to follow because you have to look at where's Rahu. Of course, the body K2 is going to follow it, but there is that, whether it's karma, past life, there is this very spiritual nature. Seven also is a unique spiritual number of 7 years, but it's also a Saturn square at the same time. And so I always notice that like K2 itself, or if I ever see somebody in a K2 period, they say it's like full surrender moment. Like you're really not in a space where you're controlling much in your life. But when you go through your Rahu, oh my gosh, you think you can control everything. It's really an interesting way to also
it's
help
so
people see
interesting.
it, if that makes sense.
It's so interesting when the minute you change into these dashas, your whole life shifts and changes, just about everything, because then you have this whole different perspective when you go into these dashas, where however they're placed in your chart's going to be what manifests in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole dasha system that you're referring to is based on the nakshatras.
Yeah.
So that's the other beautiful aspect of Vedic astrology, the nakshatras. There's 27 of them. And when I talk about Rahu being in Gemini and Ketu being in Sag, that doesn't sound that, bad at all. But it's the nakshatras they're in at these times of the catastrophic events. Because in Gemini is the nakshatra called Ardra, and opposite that in Sagittarius is the nakshatra Mula. And so, Ardra is the storm god ruled by Rudra, which is the violent howling wind,
Mm.
and it symbols the teardrop. So there you go, Rahu being in Ardra. Then you go opposite that, where Ketu was in Mula, and Mula is ruled by Nriti, which is the god of destruction. And, there's where it happens. So we have these two dynamic opposite forces that bring in these hugely destructive events. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to write that book is I wanted to have it in print when 2038 occurs and Rahu goes back to
Mm.
these sign Nakshatras and Ketu. But let me tell you a little bit about what is so cool about these 27 Nakshatras and how
Yeah.
they're so perfectly organized. I mean, they're just like a complete mythology and story of the sky and the stars. So there's 27 of them. And if you take the 360-degree zodiac and divide it up into 27 portions, you will get 13
13.
degree 20-minute portions. Did you know that that is the rate of motion of the moon each day?
Right.
The moon stays in one nakshatra per day, and that sets up the whole lunar calendar in
Yep.
India. So that is so beautiful. And each month, the moon will go through all 27 nakshatras. There's a whole myth behind that, too. We won't go into
Right.
so many myths, but they're all so significant. But what's so cool about these nakshatras is that their meanings essentially come from the star portions of that zodiac. So the stars, such as Maga, which is the first 13 degrees, 20 minutes of Leo, within that star grouping is the star Regulus. And Regulus is the heart of the lion. And the symbol for Maga is the throne. So it deals with leaders and kings and rulership. And that's where Leo essentially got all of
Right.
its meanings, you see? So
Well, yeah, and because it's a fixed star that's on the actual, it's literally on the ecliptic of the celestial equator, but also it's the only one that's literally on our same ecliptic line. So it is the star that actually sits with where the sun actually
yes,
comes. So it actually is that, because you have stars that sit higher on or lower. Like you have Antares, which is down below, and you have so many stars that tell the whole story of the actual signs.
I know.
And people sometimes in Western forget about that. Sometimes they'll remember, but I think it's very important. Also, like every nakshatra has like 4 padas, correct?
Yeah, it
So
gets
it's like
very deep.
divided into 13 degrees,
Mhm.
and they're all ruled by different planets, right? That can
Yeah,
be part of that. So it's important when people look at whether it's a world event or predictive or their own chart, there's so much you can learn about your life, how you are. And then when you come into periods or transits in those zones, that there's more going on than, oh, this planet's hitting this planet here. You know, Vedic gets you all those things.
exactly. And here is one thing that my Western astrology friends don't like me talking about.
You
And
could say it here. I'm all down.
they don't like when I say, how can you believe that Regulus is in Virgo? Regulus
Mm,
is not in Virgo. And all of these fixed stars that their meanings really do depict those signs, they've shifted into different signs. So, but here's the thing with Vedic, the stars are moving and they're moving backwards in the zodiac 1 degree every
right.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Right now they're trying to claim certain fixed stars are in different signs that have nothing to do with, but they aren't, because the stars are, their meanings remain with the nakshatras they're in, and they're constantly moving so they don't move out of the sign that they give all the meanings to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, because if you take, if you were to look at it, right, and say, okay, Regulus at 0 degree Virgo, Regulus is still sitting on the ecliptic, right? Okay, so that would change Virgo, if that makes sense. Meaning, like, some people in Western are saying, ever since 2012, when that happened, that, you know, the new kingship or energy of like Leo is about service now. And so I could sometimes actually see that. I like to blend both and be like, you know, like it's not cool to be a Kardashian anymore. It's cool to be a person of service in the world now, you know?
I,
Um,
I don't know about that. I think Regulus is Leo, period.
right. I think that, you know, one thing that both systems have is we're never going to change the planets that rule the signs.
That's right.
And so what you're saying as well with the stars and the nakshatras is it's the same. And I can completely concur with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Western does, and the problem that Western has, but also there's benefits on all things. But what I love about in Vedic astrology is that there is not a lot of let's change our mind about this or that or that, right? Like there's this constant, and it's cultural for thousands of years that has never stopped. The problem with Western is whether you want to go down the Greek roots to Egyptian roots, because it has a lot that's bridged from all different parts of the world. The Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
we took the nodes from Rahu Ketu, from Vedic. I mean, we've taken from all these places and thrown it all together. And so it's a lot more experimental.
Yeah. Yeah. But
You
you know
know?
what's so amazing, I think? When you look at the myths and going way back historically as to what the planets mean, how in the world did the people from India have the same meanings for the planets as the Greeks did? And they
Yeah.
couldn't connect. There was
Right.
no way they connected to get these meanings from one another.
And they were in the southern hemisphere, seeing the stars from the southern
True.
aspect, and the Greeks were in the north.
I know. And they still
So
have all the same meanings and mythologies behind these planets that are similar or essentially have the same meanings. Mercury, how did they get that? Mercury was the messenger. Mercury
right.
was, and really, there's a myth. I'll use Mercury as an example. In Indian astrology, Illa was dealt with in some way. Mercury, which is Buddha, and Illa could change sexes. But in Western astrology or Greek mythology, Mercury came from, a hermaphrodite. So it
Right.
had both sexes. And how did these myths correlate to be the same when they had no way of connecting? I just
Right.
think it means it's given from the divine. That's all.
Correct. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the divine, I feel like 2025 astrologically from both systems is what we've all been waiting for as astrologers. I feel like as an
Yeah.
astrologer, I always have been like, well, once we get to 2020, that was the big one. But then it's like, once we start getting into the middle of 2020s, it's going to get life changing, or I would say world changing, and us moving into what I would say is a new world. What would you define these times for you personally as an astrologer, and does it have special significance to you or not?
Yes, absolutely. So, as an astrologer, we will go back historically and do our research. Okay, so if Rahu was conjunct Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, what happened before? So, that's what I did in my book, the 2024 to 2042. Each time I went back historically and listed all the events, from the many years that these planets were in those positions. So historically, if it happened before, of course, nothing's identical with the other planets are in different places, but we can get a sense of what these positions mean. So one of the major events that we just had, March 29th, was a solar eclipse with Rahu, with Neptune, with Venus, with Mercury. I mean, this was monumental, but that same day, hours after the solar eclipse occurred, Saturn went into Pisces. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we have Saturn and Rahu together. So historically, I went back to go see what happened the last time Saturn and Rahu were together in Pisces. Not just together, because they come together every 11 years, right?
Right.
But when were they in Pisces? The last time it was 1968. So I remember I was here in 1968. We had the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. And it was the time of the Vietnam War that
Yeah.
more people were killed during that time of all the years. It was monumental.
And Nixon came in too, I
Yes.
think, right?
I think Nixon was there, and I think he was. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. So that was huge, and I think it was was it 1968? No, I think it was in the 70s that we had the Kent State 1970. But
Oh, right. Yeah.
so many things happened in 68. So the difference though is this time they're in the late degrees of Pisces, where it was in the early degrees of Pisces, which means there's different fixed stars involved in this, because I also bring in the fixed stars.
Mm-hmm.
Something, Neptune and Saturn coming together in Pisces,
Right.
they're going to be together. I don't care if you're doing Western or Vedic. The aspects are the same. So you have Saturn and Neptune together for about a year, and they vary just at some points, but they're traveling almost the same degree. So
Right.
going back, thinking about what Neptune rules, what Saturn rules. Well, for one thing, Saturn rules crude oil. It rules what's underneath the ground. It's black. And Neptune rules oil, but gases.
Mm-hmm.
So you put them together, we're going to have a lot of oil spills, a lot of catastrophes with blowups, maybe with pipelines, but they are going to be together on the fixed star sheet, SCAT. And, you know, back in the day when I was studying Western astrology and I took all the exams where I had to memorize all the fixed stars,
Right.
sheet, I always remembered it because what it sounds like.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, and so it means sorrow. It's a star of sorrow, but it also deals with shipwrecks and things to do with
Mm-hmm.
the ocean. Don't forget, this is
I was about to say Saturn, Neptune, Pisces,
right.
shipwrecks. Like,
Right. So there's going to be some major catastrophes. Number one, probably with warships.
yeah.
Number two, maybe with cruise ships. I thought, you know,
Right.
pirates are coming on board. And then
Mm-hmm.
oil spills with ships. So this is going to be something that dominates the news while they're interchanging together. They haven't even come together yet. Right now, Saturn's with
Right.
Rahu. And let me just
I
say,
know.
eclipse with Rahu and Saturn is huge. So the next 6 months till we have another eclipse, we're going to see enormous things are about to happen. This is like a time of radical shifts and changes. But you know, I think it's all happening for a divine reason. I know that sounds crazy, but I do think that something good is going to come from all of this, David. I know it is. And
Yeah, I feel the same way too. I think it's interesting too, like even in sidereal, like Uranus has just come into Taurus just recently as well.
mhm,
And so it's interesting to see the sidereal version of things because it's like, oh, okay, we've seen these outer planets kind of move into their new signs on both systems. We're waiting for the Western to see Uranus Gemini that comes in July.
yeah,
And it definitely looks like when I look at this year, like we're at that point to where evolution happens whether we like it or not. You know, we always, as I think humans, want to stay attached to the way that life always looks. But if we did that, we'd still be in buggies and I'd be taking a horse every day to work or something, right?
right.
And I think what's happened in the way that media has been, and I don't know what planet in Vedic is media. So is it Mercury with you all, right?
It's definitely Mercury.
And
Yeah.
I would say it's Mercury too. I think the Neptune aspect in Western is kind of the extension of it and how it kind of seals people's souls in many ways or takes people into getting pushed a bunch of deceit and lies.
Right.
I think what we've seen is people through TV, movies, thinking that it's always going to look this way. And what I love about astrology is its raw truth of
Right.
following what's happening,
Yeah.
where are we going, what is
Right.
changing, and we're in a world where they don't like change anymore. What I've noticed too is like even with in sidereal, Saturn just made its ingress into Pisces. It
Hmm.
was in Capricorn, it was in Aquarius. That's where it rules both signs for
Right.
such a long time. And so as a society, we had Pluto that was with it.
Right.
And so we had never experienced that. We saw, of course, Saturn, Pluto back in 82, 83. That tracks also with where you were at with the nodes.
Right.
And then 2020, right? So it's like society doesn't, now all you see on the news is this can't change. This can't change. Nothing's allowed to change. Everything needs to stay the same. And that's actually the most like I would say the worst thing for humanity is to not change and to keep everything the same and never, and just try and like hold on. It's almost like a hoarder. Like, you know, I just want life to just stay looking this one way only, and it always has to look that way. And I think that's been a problem for society, because I think what Saturn and Neptune are it's helping dissolve a lot of these
And
systems that people spiritually have lost themselves in. We're also seeing so many global conflicts based on religious. What I keep seeing is the religion thing becoming a lot more, and I've done the history as well and gone back, and you know, it feels like holy war style kind of again. That's subdued at the moment, but you know, the voices are shouting louder and louder every day.
tell me what you think. I'm going to tell you what came to me about this Neptune Saturn. You know, they rule cults, right?
Yeah.
And especially in Pisces, because Pisces about beliefs. Well, I started really thinking, how are cults going to come out in the world right now? Because you know what? It just seems like, you know, all those different cults that went on, such as Jonestown, and you know, all of that. They drank the Kool-Aid. How is this going to come back? But you know what I think it is, David? I think it's going to be where people's minds are being controlled. You see, that's what a cult is. But their minds are being controlled. And it's not just by listening to the media and all of that, which that has controlled people's minds for centuries. But it's something in the phones and in the wavelengths and the vibrations that are controlling people's minds. And I think what we're going to discover is how that technology has been used to control our minds. And I'm talking it's not just what they're talking about on the news and things like that. It is an actual vibration and frequency. This is what I think we're going to discover with the Neptune Saturn. I know this is way out there.
No, you're on, you know, Neptune looks like an antenna.
Yeah.
The glyph of the planet.
And so it is always deceptive. I mean, we're trained in astrology to think it's spiritual. Being an astrologer as long as I have, when Neptune comes up and hits planets, you don't see things coming.
No.
It's like you're under a spell the whole time. And all of a sudden you see something, you think, what was I thinking? How did I not see this? It blinds you to things.
Right.
You know, all of a sudden you wake up and you're going, I cannot believe I thought that, or I, you know, saw that, because Neptune is blinding like that. It deals with scandals too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And things that are hidden, things that are secrets, things that are subconsciously pushed away, hide it, push it under the rug, wait for it another day, and then forget about it, but really just subconsciously keep doing it. But
and you know what else it deals with? I discovered death. You never read that in books. Yes.
Or it even deals with like a parent who's not there, like disassociation, right? Or a person that is psychologically not there.
Yeah.
Right? So
absolutely.
It's actually one of the harsher planets. Like I actually will take Saturn any day of the week over Neptune.
Me too. When I see Neptune coming up, I mean, I get scared. People are scared of Saturn. I'm like, wait a minute. And we're putting them together. So.
Right. Well, what's wild is you're right, because in 1523, when Saturn and Neptune came together in Pisces, it was so, and I'm using Western.
Yeah,
they
still came together.
They still came together, and it still tracks with what was going on, but it was wild because it was when the Pope tried to stop the printing presses in Amsterdam, because people finally started to get Bibles that weren't in Latin, because the Catholic Church used to go, you can only go to a church or a monastery, and only the priest that's, you know, tapped by the church can read the Bible in Latin to you.
Yeah.
And so it's very similar to what you're saying, because that was a frequency and vibration. The printing press was, you know, in the 1400s, 15th century. And so finally, you know, Amsterdam became this place where it's like, let's print in English, let's print in French, let's print and start printing things. And the church freaked out. Plus Martin Luther in 1517, during the same Saturn Pluto for both systems, came out and called out the Pope and said, you're acting like a king and that you're God and telling everybody how they need to act. That's not what God says in the Bible, supposedly, right? Or whatever. And so all of it was backed off that. The Pope died, so it didn't last that long.
Oh, good.
And what I've noticed on the Saturn Neptune of the 500 years ago that we're kind of in, it's kind of interesting. It's a Pope shift, but it's also where they're trying to have people not be aware that they have a control system of how they're doing it. Back then, of course, it was books, because that, believe it or not, some people might be like, that's stupid. But no, back then, that would have been bigger than a cell phone today, to have a book to read something that somebody's not reading it to you because he can't read it.
Right. That's
right.
huge. Yeah,
So
same thing. I get it.
The same. It's like, I feel that this is also, I mean, I get a lot of flack for it, but I do feel like all the religions are going to have a big clash that is going to be very difficult. I feel like the Christians want to be the Knights Templars again. You're seeing the situation that's happened with Israel and Palestine and the Middle East, and it feels like all three are going to get into their corners, and it's all about this one place that they all claim. And to me, that's where society of the world's going to have to change and be like, no one religion is the owner of this one spot.
Exactly.
And I feel that's where people are getting hyped up subconsciously, hidden in the frequencies that will be revealed, that they're kind of, whether it was from their birth and what they were given as a child and their parents or whatever, or they just were in a cult or wherever they were, but it's echoing a lot in the background. We hear it every day, and now it's just, well, it's another protest about Free Palestine, or it's another protest about this, or, this, but it feels like that's where the big clashes are coming. Plus, I think Jupiter comes into Gemini in sidereal, and I feel like that's going to be massive with Saturn being in Pisces,
right?
Because it really is going to be this, what is really the truth about these things, and when is society, are we going to evolve from, stories like astrology, mythology, and so forth? We actually have, like, I can track the planet, and whether or not I believe it or not, it does do something, and it's got something to prove. Whereas we saw the Pope last year try and do this whole new thing about, you have to go through the church to say what is actually, like, truly, like, a miracle or some sort of spiritual thing, right? So there's a control there. Feels very much like the people. I think it's gonna be a hard thing for people to let go of, to be honest.
I agree. Well, you know what I always say? People say, what is the difference between religion and spirituality? And what just came out of me was, religion is searching for God outside of ourselves, where spirituality is finding God within ourselves. That's where it's all within. And that's that's what we have to remember. But I agree with you. Religion has always been, created so much war and problems in the world, because everyone wants to claim that their way is the only way. And it's not. It's like there is a divinity within us all. We are all one with God. So that's what we need to discover. And, May 29th, Rahu and Ketu will change signs sidereally. So
right. I would love to hear about this North Node ingress into Aquarius.
That's where I want to go, because that's an amazing placement. So Rahu going into Aquarius and Ketu going into Leo. Well, it's going to go at some point into the nakshatra called Shatabhishak. Nakshatra deals with the 100 healers, and that deals with healing. And what I know is about to come out is going to blow people's minds. And that is going to be a new way of healing, new technology in healing. And it's been suppressed for so many years that the drug companies want you to take pills,
right,
medicines. But really, the way that the healing with Rahu being in this particular nakshatra is going to be through vibration, energy, and frequency. If you can change the frequency and the vibration in the cells, in the body, in the mind, you will change consciousness and you will heal the body. This is about to come out. We're just on the prefaces of this big transformational change in healing. The other thing that is said,
what planet rules that nakshatra?
Rahu.
Oh wow! So
Yeah, Rahu.
that makes it
It's the
even way
head,
more
right?
powerful. No,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the
So
head,
that's why I love going deeper, because Vedic will give you that. It'll have all
right?
those layers.
Yes, absolutely. So looking at that, the other thing that Shatabishak rules is the sky watcher. And
Oh,
most people that have this nakshatra, so in other words, planets in the middle of Aquarius,
right.
love anything to do with astronomy, astrology, and also an interest in aliens. And I think
Yep.
that's the other thing, extraterrestrials. That's, they're here.
Right.
People can't accept it, but the truth is going to come out.
Well, it's
And
interesting if we use Vedic astrology over the last 2 years that Saturn was in Aquarius crossing over that nakshatra, was the UAP task force, was us seeing video from our own government and them admitting that there are UAPs, there are UFOs, there are all this. And the crazy part is that people are just like, it's here. And they're like, oh, whatever.
that's what I said. Oh my God, David. I was like, the biggest thing just hit the news that they
No,
admitted that they saw aliens in these spacecrafts, and people. So I was like, what? That is not like the most exciting thing
right.
that we've ever heard. We've been wanting to
I
get to
know.
the bottom of this for so long. They
I
come
know.
out with it, and people don't even care. I was
There's
over
like,
the top with that, David. I'm like,
oh, what?
you
But you
and
know what?
I.
This is where it proves why Rahu, there's the good and the bad, and the good is Rahu's going to get the attention to it. You know what I mean? Like Rahu being there will get the attention to it.
That's
And
right.
that's where I do like Rahu, because it's gonna be, whether you like it or not, in our face. Like it's gonna
Yes.
bring it into the forefront.
Yes, exactly. And another thing is when I'm talking about the healing that's going to come, Rahu, when people have this nakshatra really strong in their chart, usually they have a big association with people with mental illness because it's said to rule hard to cure diseases. And when I think of hard to cure diseases, I always think of mental disease. And
Yeah.
probably the hardest to cure that everyone on this planet is affected by is addictions.
Yeah.
I think we're going to come forth with some amazing cures for addictions through changing frequency and vibration in the brain. This is what I'm excited about. So,
Well, and that makes sense because it'll track with Jupiter that it's going to be in Gemini at the same time
yes.
too.
And I tracked also when Jupiter is going to be casting a trine to Rahu. I think it's in September. I just tracked that today. When they trine each other, Jupiter casts trine, so does Rahu. So
And that's right when eclipse energy is coming again.
yes,
So
yes, you got it. So, but this is going to be where the economy is going to start coming back. So I get that, we're going to go through a lot with these tariffs and stuff, but by the time, well, let me bring you through a little bit of what I tell all my students. So Jupiter is going to go into Gemini. And when it does, it's going to, for the months of June and July, it's going to be in the nakshatra Ardra. And September 11th, Jupiter was in Ardra, but it was with Rahu on September 11th. It's not with any other planets, but it's going to be in Ardra for those 2 months, June and July. And in June and July, Mars and Ketu are going to come together in Leo. And whenever they come together, that has generally been terrorist attacks. Okay.
right.
Because Mars is war, K2 is too. So I'm looking at the months of June and July to be pretty intense and dangerous. And Jupiter being in Ardra. Ardra's ruled by, its symbol is a teardrop, right? But then Jupiter goes into the nakshatra in September called Purnavasu. Purnavasu means return of the light. And I think it's so beautiful that nakshatra follows the storm god. Return of the light is a sunny day that occurs after the storms.
Right.
So we got Jupiter in Purnavasu, which is actually ruled by Jupiter. It's a beautiful nakshatra. That happens in September. And at the same time, in October, Jupiter will touch foot into Cancer, 0 degrees, and station and turn retrograde. So Jupiter will be 0 degrees of Cancer from October 18th through December 5th, sidereally, that is.
Right.
And that is amazing.
Right.
Because Jupiter's exalted in Cancer. And I've been looking at world leaders charts that have that degree mark, 0 degrees of Cancer, such as, well, I didn't know I was going to go here, but Donald Trump has his Saturn in the 12th house in Cancer, and Jupiter's going to hit it. So I think all of his workings with these tariffs are going
When he has Venus a couple degrees after that, right?
Right. So Jupiter's going to be hitting that and Venus. But then by June of 2026, when Jupiter goes back in, because on December 5th, it will go back into Gemini and remain till June 1st of 2026. And then it's going to be in Cancer for a year. And that is going to bring an enormous healing for the world, especially the United States, because Jupiter will be in the 8th house of the United States chart. Over Mercury Rahu in the United States chart, and believe it or not, the United States dasha right now is Mercury Rahu, and they're both in the 8th house for that.
Wow.
Yes, for the U.S.
Yeah.
And right now, Mars is on it. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Mars is in Cancer right now in the 8th house of the United States chart. So all hell's breaking out, and especially uncovering secrets and corruption. That's the 8th house. Mars crossing over Mercury and Rahu. But then Jupiter's going to come. Jupiter's going to heal it all. And the economy is going to come together. And there's going to be a spiritual coming together, because Cancer is the sign of family, and we have Mars right now in Cancer, and that breaks up families. There's a lot more divorce when Mars is in Cancer, and it really brings out the worst in people. But when
there's been a Venus retrograde at the same token, that's finally coming to an end, but going to be with Saturn for an extended period of time, and Rahu. I mean, I'm mind blown how long they're sitting on each other.
I know.
But it makes sense of why it's felt the way it has recently. I think people don't realize that once we get out of this in this next month and a half, like, we're going to have this year where everything, we don't have to worry about Mars and Venus retrograde. We're going to be in this place that's a completely different place.
You got it. And, I studied the Venus retrograde in great detail. It's I know you probably know this, but just for your viewers to know this, Venus has an amazing cycle where it forms a pentagram, and it's like a process of 8 years, where each time, 5 different times it goes retrograde, it forms that pentagram. But I've discovered, Venus is about peace. And right before it goes when it goes retrograde, right in the process of being retrograde, it goes from an evening star to a morning star. Right. And when that happens, the ancients thought the world was ending. Venus disappeared in the sky for 8 days, but then it came back as a morning star, which was definitely more violent and difficult. But here's what I discovered from my research. I went back and I found that most of the peace treaties that occurred were around 9 months later, after the Venus went retrograde.
Gotcha. Yeah. When it switches over again.
Yes. And so that deals with peace. So I think something this summer is going to happen that's going to need peace. And then everything will quickly come together. We will have some peace treaties and coming together. The tariffs, everything, I think, is going to come to negotiations. It's going to work, and there's going to be a major healing, especially because Jupiter, for that time being, will give us a glimpse of what it's going to do in Cancer between October and December.
Right.
It's just going to be an incredible, amazing year of radical shifts and changes, and it's all going to happen really fast.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, I just thought of this because we're talking, but Venus is it's going to station direct here with this full moon this weekend. And
Yeah.
what blows my mind though is it's for in sidereal at the very like first degree of
It is.
Pisces.
It's 0
And
degrees.
so that means 8 years from now, the Venus retrograde in Pisces will ingress into Aquarius. And those are when the periods of life change so much. So if you look at everything that happened over this Venus retrograde, it's
Exactly.
a closing cycle of a Venus retrograde cycle that's been in a long form because it's 3 degrees every, 8 years it takes to go back.
Yes. And it lands in the same month, almost the same day and same degree. 8 years.
Correct. It's the only
Every
that's
eight
why the
years.
Mayans used Venus for
I
their calendars. It's the only one where you could go up 8 years later, the
know.
days, and
Exactly.
just be like, yeah, Venus same degree. It's crazy.
I know. And I always tell people, go back 8 years ago. You'll know what this Venus retrograde
Right.
is going to produce. It's amazing.
No, so I mean it's amazing because from looking at it sidereal wise, that's a big one to be like, this is the final Venus retrograde in Pisces. That'll just be Pisces. It's going to be a combination and going into Aquarius, and that's where that's where Rahu's tracking to go towards to really start. I always look at astrology as like they're out there doing spiritual construction. Like Rahu's like preparing everything because it met with Venus and is like, what are the plans you want when you
Yeah.
start to come into Aquarius 8 years from now? It's like, oh, okay. So it's a big deal though, because I feel like it is like people do feel at the end in Pisces. It's happening in both Vedic and Western right now.
Yeah.
And it's exalted in here. And Venus likes Aquarius as well. So it's not, I think people have been crying, I've been saying crying wolf too much about things, but when the wolf really comes,
Yeah. Yeah. People ignore them after they've been crying so
right.
long. You
But
bet.
I love what you're tracking with, because I feel the same way. I feel like the really hard stuff a lot of us have gone through. I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, 2020 to now, I mean, that's been a lot to take on all at once
Right.
astrologically, and to see all the planets all just being so close together within 180 degrees for so
Mhm.
long. It's concentrate. It's like reminds me when I was a kid, we
Yeah.
had to do orange juice with that little 2 liter frozen little frozen thing of orange juice. So, it was all the concentrate and add the water. All the planets are like that thick frozen orange juice. I don't even think make those anymore.
Mm.
But
That's
I try to tell people that because I'm like, you don't realize like everything is just, there's no room, but everything is it's hitting all one side of the zodiac in the southern part as well. But also we're starting to see planets starting to balance themselves out as we step out of this year into the forward years. It's really been the time to be alive, I would say. Would you agree?
I agree. It's very exciting time to be alive. Everything's moving so fast.
Yeah.
Even this is weird, but today I was like looking at the clock and I thought that, 15 minutes had gone by and an hour went by. Do you feel
Right.
time is speeding up or is it just
Oh, no, it's speeding up. I feel that. And then, it was weird in 2020. They actually said the Earth was speeding up in rotation. And
Mm,
then it was weird. Like a couple years ago, they said now it went back. But it's been bouncing a lot as far as the Earth itself has been going faster. So we're in these big shifting times.
exactly.
So if you could give anybody advice for this year with North Node Saturn, but then Rahu Saturn, and Rahu ingressing into Aquarius, Jupiter making it like what would be the best advice for people to have a happy life? Like, what do you think are the biggest themes for people to make their lives better for themselves? Like, where do you think they should focus on from a Vedic perspective?
Well, with Rahu going into Aquarius, it's all about healing. And
Mm,
that's not, when you think of healing, you're thinking you're healing your body. But
right.
it's really about emotional and spiritual healing because you can't heal the body if you just cut something out. You have to go to the core that caused it. And that's that's the emotional issue. And, with the thinking mind, but it deals with our emotions. And yes, we have to heal ourselves. We have to see what's causing. And, the horoscope, our chart, is the most powerful tool we have to see what it is that's blocking us in our life. And when we
Right.
see what it is, we can work it out. But we've got to get conscious and aware as to what we've been doing to block ourselves, to empower ourselves. I think this year is a year of self-empowerment, if I could say. Let go of all the control the outside world has on you and recognize and realize what you're here to do. What makes you happy? What makes your heart sing, not what you're expected to do because of your parents told you or your spouse has told you or what you think others think you should do. You should do what you've come here to do and be who you are. I mean, being an astrologer for 40 years, it wasn't easy, David,
I'm
especially
sure it wasn't.
in the 80s. I mean, so many times people were trying to save me and told me I was going to hell. They told my children I was going to hell. They were
Right.
scared. I had to go through all of this and they thought I was nuts. You want to be a what?
Right.
And that was my heart's desire. And boy, am I glad I followed it and did it, because
Right.
I couldn't be happier today. I love what I do. I can't wait to get out of bed every day and look at charts and read for people, write books. I love it. Go around the world and talk to people about the divine science, which is astrology. So if
Right.
I had listened to other people, I wouldn't be where I am today. So what I want to tell everybody today is to follow your heart, no matter if everybody says you're crazy. Follow what your heart is telling you to do. That's what this energy of Rahu, Saturn. Saturn's reality. Rahu blows it up. You got to be realistic and real. And even Neptune can be spiritual, but we have to really quit being controlled by all the media, everything around us, the people around us, and find that inner voice that's telling
Hmm.
what
I love that.
be. And this is what this year is. And I think it's the most exciting year for becoming aware and conscious. I love it. I love the Aquarius, the Rahu going there, and even Ketu and Leo.
I was just going to ask, what is your take on that? Like,
Yeah.
what's the spiritual play for K2, and
Well,
then especially a K2 and Leo? Like, like what? I'd love to know, like in the Vedic, because they're the ones that gave us it.
More than anything, people don't know this, but the signs Leo and Aquarius and the fifth and the 11th house, because that's the fifth and the 11th sign,
Right.
they deal with politics more than any other sign. Did you know that? Yes. So what I'm seeing is that with Rahu being in Aquarius, because Aquarius remember, if you ever look at the constellation of Aquarius, it looks like a big cloud because
Right.
there's so many stars in it.
Yeah.
And that's humanity. And then you go across to Leo and there's that one powerful star, Regulus. That's the king. So this is bringing things to humanity, the breakdown from the kings, the rulers, to understanding the collective and what the collective needs. Rahu is where we're going. Ketu is the past, what we're leaving. So we're leaving behind the old kingship and the rulership or the control of the religions to humanity, the masses, people coming together as a group, learning how to work together and help one another. This is what it's all about, the Aquarius-Leo axes. Because remember, you can't look at one without looking at the other. They're a polar axes,
So, I was going to say that means like creativity wise too, it makes sense that you have to go to this North Node Aquarius, do what you say, like follow yourself. Don't follow what people say. Find that door that you have been afraid to do, and that it might be unexpected. That's the best place to go, because I do feel like, Hollywood's energetically dead. Like creativity like is going to shift so much, because the more that people adjust into these new frequencies, these new technologies, like it's not about trying to continue to keep doing the old creativity. And I was going to ask you, romantically, for people out there. I mean, I'm married. I know you're married, but I know that there's a lot of people out there still looking for love out there. What is your recommendation now that Venus retrograde is going to finish, and we're going to see a K2 in Leo. We're going to start seeing, of course,
Yeah. So,
these eclipses in with Leo eclipses, and we're going to start seeing Aquarius
you know,
eclipses.
the Nakshatras in Leo, Purva Falguni as well as Uttara Falguni, are called the marriage Nakshatras.
Mm.
And even Purva Falguni is ruled by Venus. So this is a time when people are going to start appreciating marriage more and valuing it, because for so long, people are afraid to get married. They've been
I
in
know.
families so they think they're going to have a broken. So relationships, more than anything, I know you guys have heard this so many times, but you've got to work on yourself, because
Yeah.
a relationship is a reflection of who you are, what you are. It is a mirroring. And as you change your vibrational frequency, you actually change the kind of people that you're attracted to and
Mm-hmm.
to your life. So this whole Leo and Aquarius polarity of Rahu and Ketu brings in different energy in the area of relationship. People will be more committed. People will be more into love and commitment and working together as humanity. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful time where marriage is going to become more of value, and people won't be so afraid to get married because they think they're going to reenact the whole scenario that they witnessed with their parents if it was.
Right.
So, because if you change yourself and your past, and you recognize all the things that caused you to create the blocks in your future from your past, you heal those, then you heal relationships and the opportunities to experience and have love, unconditional love through a relationship. And everyone, I don't care who you are, what you say, everyone needs to be in love. Love
Right.
heals,
I was, yeah, it is the greatest healer, and it's what makes life so beautiful.
It is. We have to share. You don't want to go on a trip and look at a beautiful sunset and be by yourself, where you can't share it with someone else. That's just
Right.
not the way it was meant to be. And love and marriage and family gives us connection and happiness. So I would do
Yes.
that for everyone, because that is the cornerstone and the basis of our society too. That's
Right.
why I think Jupiter going into Cancer is going to also
Yeah.
bring families together, because if you have broken families, you're going to have heartbreak and problems.
Right.
I was in Turkey one time, and I
Mm-hmm.
looked around and there was no street people like, we have all over in the United States. And I asked my friend, I said, why are there no street people? She says, because we have family. We don't let our family go out
Right.
on the streets and be abandoned like that, no matter what they've done.
It's
And I
true.
thought, wow, novel idea, right? That's just so true. And
It's
here, if somebody doesn't act the way we want, or all of these issues that we have, we throw them out on the street.
right.
Not right. So, anyway, family, love, marriage, children, it's the most beautiful part of life. And that's
Well,
part
and
of,
yeah, the population rate is down
yeah,
to actually levels that, in order for us to continue, our societies have to rise again.
exactly. And I think it is going to. I think this is a huge turning point. We've been through everything that we needed to learn about the breakup and separation of love and family and children and connection. And now we're going to be brought back to it. So this is a good time.
So I have one last question, especially on this. Like, we'll use the Rahu Saturn conjunction as a good one, because what I've loved from learning in Vedic astrology is how to count from just one planet and be like, oh, if a planet's in the sign that's in front of it, that's the second placement of it. So if you have a planet behind that planet, that's like a 12th house kind of version of it, the 12th to it, right? Or the 4th to it, or whatever. So
Mhm.
with the Rahu going into Aquarius and then Saturn being in Pisces, is that one of a more positive shift? Because if you think about it, it's no longer like Saturn's been tracking as the 12th to where Rahu's been.
Yeah. Yeah. So with Rahu and Leo, Saturn second from Rahu. And that means an organization of the economy, bringing things together financially, getting things
Yeah.
in order. I've known many, many very wealthy people with Saturn in the second house. So second from Rahu can bring in order in financially. And boy, are we a mess in the world with that. So that,
Right. I mean, that's where, if you think about it, Saturn's asking for responsibility, integrity, and things to be in a fair position. Because if it's unfair, that's not going to work out. Saturn's exalted in Libra and Capricorn. It likes to, hey, play by the rules and everything works out right. And
Mhm.
so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of adjustments right now about where's fair in exchange in the world, where's fair, where is the rules that need to be written, especially Rahu's here. It's time to rewrite these rules and
Right.
how they're done. And so, you
And that's
know,
actually what these tariffs are supposed to be about, making things right where everybody pays their fair share. But realize that that goes, everything that's out there on a collective is individually. So,
yeah.
as above, so below. So, individually, we're making it, like you're saying, right and fair within ourselves with the finances and the money, not just, because what's out there actually does reflect what we're going to experience personally. So,
Well, I was going to say too, wouldn't it be if Saturn's here in Pisces that, you know, spiritually speaking, you can't be just using your money to go get blasted and drunk anymore. I mean, like, you've got to have follow where Rahu is. This
right.
connection energy,
Yes.
using a way to make humanity better, which also on your part with Jupiter Cancer, this K2 Leo, I really do feel like it's like, what are you contributing to society to make it greater and better? And that responsibility is not just
And yeah,
wanting to back out of this place and just leave and to be into your own kind of kingdom of escapism, you know?
and that's why I say it's the year of empowerment for people to discover who they really are, what they are here to do in this world, as you're saying. What is their purpose? And
Hmm.
nobody feels good about their life if they don't have any purpose.
Right.
Purpose is what gives life meaning. And that's why the 10th house is the house that deals with our purpose, not just our career, but our sense of purpose. And we all need to feel purposeful in some way that gives life meaning. So, so my purpose, your purpose, we want the world to know about astrology. We want to make it mainstream. That's our thing. Anyway,
Right.
that's my thing. I shouldn't speak for you, but I think it is.
No, I'm on the same page with you on that. And you could definitely say that about me because it's true.
Yeah.
I have one more question that's the curveball question, and it's Uranus. And I think it's in Rohini right now,
Yeah.
right?
No,
And so,
actually, it's in Critica right now.
oh, it's in Critica. So is it staying in, it's probably staying in Critica this year
Yes,
then.
yes, because Rohini is like in the middle of Taurus, so it's in the first. It's going to move up to about by a year to about 10 degrees, and that's where it's going
Oh,
to shift into Rohini. And about a
oh,
year,
okay. Yeah. Rohini's on the other side. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not
Mhm.
prior. Critica's Aries into Taurus, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay. So Critica it's like the sage who burns, right? The fire. There's the like the purification, right? It's a purification nakshatra.
yeah. Its symbol is a blade, a razor, a
Oh yeah,
sword.
okay.
And it cuts to the chase. I mean, people with planets in Critica are like, they don't mince their words, they just get to the point. And it's also a nakshatra that deals deeply with protection. They protect people. And people that have that nakshatra strong, a lot of times they'll marry people with children and they become protectors of children that aren't theirs. I've seen that so many times.
Yeah, so because Uranus has been very it's thrown a lot of curveballs, especially if you track Vedic astrology since it made its ingress
Yeah.
last year.
Yes.
Um
And it was 84 years ago that it was in the position that it's coming into in the next year or so. And what I tracked, as a matter of fact, I just have a video out on this, but what I tracked is that Uranus 84 years ago was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. It was
right.
there at that point
I
with
know.
Jupiter. with
Yep.
Jupiter. So I hope that's not an attack on the United States. But even if it's not a physical attack, maybe it's the tariffs that are the attack. So cyber
Right.
attacks,
Yeah.
that nature. But it's a big deal. It's not
Yeah,
easy.
because I guess my question is like, do you think that Critica likes having Uranus there, or is it more of like a
Well,
incompatibility
we
having
want
it
to
there?
think of Uranus as the great awakener, but you know darn good and well when it hits you, it's a darn shock. You're shocked, and
Right.
shocking things happen with Uranus. It's just a boom, and you can't believe it happened out of the blue. It's shocking, but it's just like a big attack, like they say, but it is like a higher octave of Mercury. So it does deal with inventions and, new things coming out, technological inventions, those type of things too.
Right.
But
Well, and yeah, and so it's kind of interesting because in Vedic as well, it's America's in its Pluto return sign, and same with Uranus as
Mhm,
well.
mhm.
And so in Western, we're getting the Uranus ingress into Gemini in July, and
Yeah,
now we catch up with you all.
yeah.
um, so it definitely is tracking that there's a lot of changes that are going to continue here. But I really was asking that question about that Critica because I have my moon there in Critica, so I've always, and I guess that's a good place. It's in Taurus. It's an interesting place. But with Uranus, I'm always like, I wonder what that's going to be like. I've always thought of that one.
Well, just consider this. Uranus is a planet of change.
It
When it
is.
hits anything, it changes things, period.
So
So,
the blade's coming from every different angle that you can't predict to purifying
yeah,
and bring us higher.
yes, it cuts to the chase, gets the job done. And
I
I like
like that.
Yeah. So good.
Well, I mean, so you have to finish, you have your university. Tell me about your Galactic Planner because like what how would that how did you do it and what is it helping people with? Because you were telling me that you've got the Nakshatras in there, you've got a lot of stuff in there.
Well, I have three sons, and I always say one of my greatest accomplishments in this world is my University of Vedic Astrology, except for my three sons. They are my greatest accomplishment. So,
I
but
love that.
But my youngest son, he would always he would get a reading from me every 3 months, and he'd put everything I had to say in his phone. He'd write down what I said would happen on those dates and times. And so he was doing this for a really long time. And one time I told him, I said, listen, Austin, you're going to meet the girl you're going to marry on this day. There was like all these planetary lineups. So he puts that in his phone. He says, Mom, I'm not interested in that right now. I'm starting my own business. That's my focus. Well, he met her on that day.
Wow.
And on that day, they were like, fell in love right away. I don't know how that happens, but yeah, my other son was there and watched the whole thing. He says they never stopped talking the entire night. And then he shows her his phone and said, my mom's an astrologer. She told me I was going to meet you tonight. And he showed it to her. I'm
That's awesome.
stayed with him, just like scared to death. But anyway, so that happened. So then he started thinking he's a businessman. And he said, Mom, what if we did this for everyone? Not everybody can get a reading. There's just, the whole world could have access to astrology. So I put my nose to the grind and I wrote every translation of every planet aspect in different houses. This took
Wow.
thousands and thousands of write-ups because I
Well, and
really
it needs to be updated because a lot of these old programs and
know.
stuff, and I'm not dogging on like Robert Hand because he did great
No,
jobs, but
we grew
there's
up.
not a good Vedic perspective on it.
No, and
And
it's
there's
not really.
not been any updated terms since like the 70s and
Yeah.
80s.
Yes. So what the Galactic Planner does is it does your Vedic sidereal chart, and it calculates all of your aspects, all the aspects to your natal chart
Wow.
each and every day. It will come out on your calendar, on your phone or on your computer. So every day you pull up your calendar, it will tell you Venus conjunct Mars today. And this is what it means in layman's terms. I
Wow.
wrote
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so each and every aspect for every day, and even the moon going through all of the houses and aspects. But the moon, because it happens every month, it's kind of a repeat. You can disable those, but you can keep certain ones that.
Well, I would say keep it on. That's what teaches you astrology. When you're a young astrologer, it's the moon that teaches you
It's true.
astrology.
It's true. But every aspect is calculated to your individual chart. And even now we included the dashas. We had
Wow.
10,000 write-ups for the dashas.
I was going to say, because there's so many.
Yes. So here's the thing. I believe there's nothing out there right now. I put my nose to the grind and did this so that everybody could have the opportunity to have their own chart calculated in every single transit to each day of your life. And it's such an amazing value. And I think it's the best thing out there. And we are so excited to give this to the world. So it's a
And so how do people get access to it? Where do they go to purchase it?
galacticplanner.com. And yes, and yeah, and you can have something to help your viewers to get it at a discount. You can do that too if you like, David. Would you like that?
I mean, I'm just going to tell people to go get it. I don't need anything back, like, you know, because I believe in you. I've known you now. We've met, we've done things. I always follow you. I've been subscribed to you for over a decade.
Wow.
Like, I love the work that you do.
I appreciate you.
It's such an honor to be your friend and to be able to talk to you about astrology and to also learn from you as well. And I'm just so proud of what you've done because you've helped so many people. I mean, you get so much love because you do such great work. And I just want you to know that as another astrologer out there watching, people love you. And you've really done such a great job of really giving people accuracy, a way to find the positive and the truth. You're not afraid to tell people the truth and call the balls and the strikes where they're at. And that's why we all love you so much.
Thank you.
I'm speaking for all of us out there.
Wow. That means so much coming from you. You're amazing. Thank you.
And then honestly, you know, I mean, I love the Galactic Planner, but then your prediction book's more of my corner. I love predictions. I love prophecy work. I love that. So
yeah,
that just came out, right? You just wrote all that. That's amazing. And going to 2042, which, yeah, I think that people that might just look like the numbers, like you said, like they're interchanged, but no, the amount of things happening from now till then is literally world changing. And it's not, that's not me like just saying it. I know that it's real. It is. And it's so, I want to read what you wrote about it because it's,
well, let me tell you,
wild.
Not to scare everyone, but wait till you read about 2030. I like, you know, everything's going to be great and grand, but 2030, look out. There's some major events happening then. We should do a whole talk on that, but I don't want to scare people, especially where we're going into a good period for the time. Right. But everything's cyclic, and you know, everything is an opportunity for growth and healing. Everything. That's
very much so.
Here. Yeah. So.
Well, that's what's so great. And I appreciate you again for being on here to do this with me and to talk East West, but you are also a Western astrologer too. That truly did. And I can concur and say, as a Western astrologer, I don't know where my life would be without Vedic astrology, because it's the hidden secret a lot of Western astrologers don't want to say is, if I really want to know where somebody's at, I'm always pulling up their Vedic astrology on the side too.
Yeah, I agree.
You gotta
so deep.
You know, it's great to know both, and it's really, really positive. And it, I know it can. I think for a lot of Western astrology or people who love astrology, the barriers can be the language. But honestly, there's no barrier there.
I agree.
It really is just get over the hump the same way you got over the hump to get into astrology in the first place.
Right.
And then you're in a plethora of just so many amazing skills and all the different divisional charts that you can run through there. What I like about Vedic astrology is a lot easier. Just run my D1, my D9, my D10, my D45, my D60 instead of, okay, my secondary progressed. It's just very just do.
It's so clear. It is simpler once you learn it. And by the way, I am working on a new book already. And it is on the divisional charts. And what I have discovered, and me and my partner, she's been my student, become my partner, Shrikala Ram. We're working on this book together. and it is 3, 6, and 9 because we're
Wow.
relating it to what Nikola Tesla said. If you understand the mechanics behind the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you'll understand the workings of the universe. So what we're doing in this book is we are analyzing those divisional charts, how powerful and meaningful they are. And we're also including house number 12 because really they're all divisions of 3.
Right,
and
right.
That's what we're going to be in this book. We are doing so much research, and it is so much fun to learn things that I haven't even read about. We're just discovering things. It is a blast. So that will probably come out within a year or less.
Right. That's going to be fascinating because I'm not kidding. I was just in Sedona last weekend at an event, and that got brought up in conversation with a woman with her booth. And I was thinking about that. And then I just thought in my head about the divisional charts and why, like the D9 chart, for example, is so powerful to understand as an individual. And then I started thinking about the D6. I'm like, oh, like it really is interesting that when you start correlating that understanding and algorithm and throw that into the astrology, the mind-blowing things that are possible in that.
Right. It is mind-blowing. And so I always tell everybody, we're on the tip of the iceberg with the knowledge with astrology.
That's true.
We're going to take this so profoundly deep.
Yeah, I guess I have one stupid last question.
Yeah.
What do you feel about I asked everybody, what do they feel about AI? I personally think it's going to help us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the Vedic astrology says about AI.
I mean, used properly, it's going to make our work easier.
Yeah.
But right now, somebody showed me some AI stuff and everything was wrong.
Right, right.
It was saying that right now Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct. I'm like, where is this coming?
No, I know.
It's not there yet. It's a mess right now. But eventually,
no, that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years is the AI astrology and fixing that and understanding why it gets it wrong. And it really is confused because of the ascendants. That's actually what the AI is having a difficulty in running, and with all the different time periods and so forth. So
we're at the beginning stage of this. And like I said, this can really help us with the research to move this ahead quicker.
Right.
So, we've got to be on the AI bandwagon because it's not going away. It's like, what if we refuse to learn computers? That's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And ironically enough, the computer boom was that Saturn and Aquarius in Vedic back in the 90s, right? Like it's the same kind of moving into Pisces. I mean, it's kind of interesting when Saturn left Aquarius sidereal into Pisces, it was Windows 95 that was everywhere, and everybody started to buy personal computers, PCs. Like it was, now people actually had them in their homes. It wasn't the elite who had an Apple,
Exactly.
And so, and with Rahu here, it's saying, I think creatively and a lot of stuff, there's some beautiful things. And I think that humanity is going to find ways to find their purpose. Then you don't have to worry so much about AI. I think when you're in your life with purpose, there's nothing to fear.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I think of when I think of AI, it doesn't have a soul. It can do a lot of work for us, but it doesn't have a soul. And that's the only thing that it needs and it'll never have. So that we'll be reminded of that as AI advances. But it's going to, if we can put together all of the earthquakes that ever happened in the world with AI, figure out what exactly is part of that, planetary picture, then we can predict them better through AI and astrology.
It will be astrology that will be the algorithm with AI to help the world. Like, I believe that 100%.
I mean, the planets are the vibration, the frequencies. I have this old book. It's called The Cosmic Harp. And it's about how all the planets have an actual sound, music frequency. And this is how it all affects us. And it affects us every day of our life. And we're all connected through the planets and the divine force. And I call astrology the divine science because it is this divine force that is part of the divine, which you want to call it, God, whatever you want to call it. This is part due of the mechanics of astrology.
Very much.
So,
Well, thank you, Joni. So
thank you, David.
galacticplanner.com and then jonipatry.com.
Now it's my website is galacticcenter.org. That's my main website, but my YouTube channel is at Joni Patry.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it.
Or galacticplanner.com for the Galactic Planner.
Galacticplanner.com, or the university is universityofvedicastrology.com. So all that's on my website, though. You can find everything you're looking for.
And definitely subscribe to Joni on YouTube if you already haven't. I'm sure most people have, but if you haven't, you should, because you will get so much info. Yeah. I love that you just crank them always out. So
I know. I got one coming out every day this week.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, David. What a joy and a pleasure. And I hope that we have many more connections again in the future.
Definitely.
Yes, we'll do.
Thanks so much, Joni.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Okay. Monster. Attention, please.